Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, good afternoon. I hope you're having a nice time at home here. Okay, and today I'm going to continue the lesson on chapter 12. Last week I did 12.1 and 12.2. So today I'm going to continue with 12.3, which is neurons and synapse. Now, last week we had this lesson when one part I mentioned you will not be able to understand about the composition of what kind of tissues are in the gray matter and the white matter. So after today's explanation, you will be able to understand what are the tissues that are found in the gray matter and the white matter of the spinal cord. Okay, because I'm going to show you exactly what are called axons and then the myelin sheath and also the cell bodies. Okay, so today I'm going to share screen. Hope you can see this. Okay, so I do not know who is with me and with watching today. So if you'd like to know, if you'd like to let me know, you can just type into the chat box and just oh yeah, okay. So I think my line is not very good at the moment. Okay, I'm going to share now. Sorry, I think I clicked the wrong thing. Okay, so let's carry on. All right. So neurons and synapse. Okay, first of all, let's look at neurons. There are actually three types of neurons. Okay, so without understanding the structure, I'm going to go through with the structure of the neuron first. Every neuron should have these particular basic structures. So before that, let me introduce the names. Okay, now neurons, there are actually three. So there are three, the nerve cells, they are called neurons. So sometimes neurons are spelled without an E, sometimes with an E. So they are both acceptable. Okay, so I noticed that in Form 5 textbook, it is spelled with Neurones. But in your Form 4 textbook, it is without the E. So if either one is acceptable, so don't have to be too particular with the spelling. As long as you mention nerve cells or neurons, you're all right. Okay, so the nervous system is made up of millions of cells which look like this. So you have this part here called the cell body, which looks like, cytoplasm, and then you have these projections that will branch out everywhere. So they are called dendrites. And then these cells, there are three types here, they are called neurons. Okay, the three types names are different. Okay, you have this called sensory neuron, which is the one on the right hand side. This is called sensory neuron. Okay, let me get my pen. So this is the sensory neuron. All right, sensory neuron, which is also known as the afferent neuron. Afferent, afferent neuron, but more commonly known as the sensory neuron. Okay, and these neurons, they pass or they transmit impulses only in one direction. Okay, they never use the same neuron to go two ways. Okay, so it's either one way to the right or to the left or whatever direction it is. If you need to have impulse going back to the other organ, you need another neuron. So these neurons are able to pass impulse or transmit impulse in only one direction. And there's a reason for it. Afterwards I'm going to explain. All right. So the other second one is called relay neuron. Okay, let's look at relay neuron is actually interneuron. So your new syllabus, the SM syllabus, they use the word relay neuron. So if you see the word interneuron, this one was used in the KB-SM syllabus, it means the same thing. So for the interneuron, you will find that it doesn't look very long. It doesn't have the very long projections called the axon or dendron, right? Dendron axon. But it will have you have the cell body with a lot of these dendrites. Okay, one more is the motor neuron. Motor neuron is also known as the efferent neuron. Efferent. Okay, usually the motor neuron has a very long axon. Okay, and the dendron is shorter on the other side. Okay, you will see what I mean when I show you the basic structures of the neurons. Okay, so just at the moment, you just remember there are three types of neurons: sensory neuron, relay, and motor neuron. Okay, next. Now let's look at the basic structure of a neuron. So all the three types of neurons will have some parts of this, okay, especially the cell body. Okay, let's look at the basic structures of a neuron. First of all, the cell body. So the cell body is easy to recognize. You'll find that you have the biggest part there, you have the nucleus inside, you have cytoplasm, and it's all like branches out like a star shape kind of, the shape of it. So this is the cell body, which is also known as soma. Okay, soma is the cell body, right? And you'll see the nucleus inside, and you'll see that cytoplasm. Okay, axon. Okay, just I use the word axon. An axon is a long projection here from the cell body. So from the cell body, there's one end that projects out, very long. Okay, and you call this axon. The function of axon is to transmit impulse away from the cell body. So when the impulse moves out from the cell body, that part you can label that as axon. So axon's function is to transmit impulse away from the cell body. Okay, next one. There's dendrites. Okay, dendrites are all these tiny branches that come out from the cell body. The function of cell body is to receive impulse actually. Okay, so you will see a cell body with many projections here, these tiny projections here. The purpose is to receive impulse actually. Okay, so these are called dendrites. These are like nerve endings. Okay, and then you have myelin sheath. So myelin sheath is actually a type of fat. It's a lipid that is found on the axon. It will cover the axon. It envelops the axon. It covers the axon. Okay, so they are called myelin sheath. It is a type of fat. Okay, and it serves a function. I'll show you the function later. And next one, node of Ranvier. Okay, now node of Ranvier is found in between the myelin sheath. So you will see that there are certain parts here which are not covered by myelin sheath. Okay, all along your axon, you have these parts here. Okay, like here. All right, they are not covered entirely with the myelin sheath. That is called the node of Ranvier. Okay, it also serves a purpose. Okay, and one more, synaptic knot. Okay, so synaptic knot is the other end. The other end that is going to synapse. Synapse is actually like make a connection with the other neuron. Okay, like this is a cell body. Right, this is a cell body. Right, and then you have the dendrites here. So this is making connection with the other side. Okay, so these endings are called synaptic knots. All right, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 basic structures of a neuron. Again, just now you saw the three neurons, they look a little bit different from each other. So each one will have slight variations in terms of the length of the axon, okay, and also maybe the location of where the cell body is. So they will give you an indication what type of neuron it is. Okay, now let's look at the function first of these particular parts. Okay, let's look at cell body. All right, now see the cell body here, it has a nucleus and you have a lot of cytoplasm inside there. So it's a cell body that consists of a nucleus and many cytoplasmic projections. So see all these things branching out, they are called dendrites. The cell body's function is to integrate the signals. So it's like the CPU, right, of your computer. So all the messages come into the cell body and it sort of like coordinates all the signals that come in. Okay, integrates the signals means sort of sort it and then coordinate the activities that are in the nerve cell. Okay, in the entire neuron. So it's like the center, all right? All the signals come in there. And then after that, all right, you will see this axon, all right? Axon is the elongated branch. So this comes up from the cell body and it's long, right? The function of axon is to carry impulse out of the cell body. So when you have the cell body here, so you will see the direction of impulse going this way, this one must be the axon. Okay, or rather if you have the axon here, then you know the direction it will be coming out. So the axon carries impulse away from the cell body. Okay, next part. We have called this direction of impulse. Okay, so you see carefully, the direction of impulse is always away from the axon, the direction of impulse for axon is always away from the cell body. Okay, one more. All right, next one. This one is dendrites with all these projections, short branches. They receive nerve impulses. The function of this dendrite is to receive nerve impulses from the other neurons. So other neurons may synapse. Okay, so they have one neuron coming here, one neuron coming here. So you see all the neurons making connections here. Okay, so a neuron here may be receiving many signals. So that's why sometimes we can multitask. We can multitask because we're able to receive a lot of signals from everywhere. For example, we may be doing work and then we're listening to music at the same time, and then you're listening to someone talking, right? And you're watching the movie at the same time. So you're at one moment, you're receiving all this information. Okay, you're able to do that because you have the multiple synapses. Okay, and it's going to integrate all these signals to be sent to the particular places in your brain to be processed, to be interpreted. Okay, so you have these dendrites. So, and also they send them to the cell body. So the dendrite will send this signal into the cell body. Okay, after receiving the signals from other neurons, it sends into the cell body. And the cell body will send it out to the axon. Okay, next, myelin sheath. Okay, so you see these diagrams here. This show it receives all this impulse from the surrounding neurons. Okay, myelin sheath. So myelin sheath is actually an insulating membrane that coats the axon. It's a type of fat actually. Okay, and there's a type of nucleus there. So we call it Schwann cell. Okay, you don't need to know. So this myelin sheath is actually to protect the neuron from injury. There are a few functions here you will see. Number one, protects the neuron from injury. Number two, it acts as an insulator. You see, insulator is important for electrical impulse because you see when you have a wire where the electricity is moving. Okay, when you touch the wire, the electricity is going to jump into your body. You're going to get electrical shock, isn't it? Because the electricity may jump into your body. So in order to prevent that, there is a rubber, right? For the electrical wire, you have the insulation wire, the insulation rubber. This is to prevent the impulse from passing into your body. So same principle here. You have the impulse passing through the axon. And then if you don't have something to insulate the electrical impulse, this neuron may have another neuron nearby. Okay, there are many neurons together at the same time. So if you don't have the insulation, the impulse may jump over to the next neuron, and then it may be transferred to another place, which is not the correct place to be transferred to. Okay, so you need to make sure the impulse stays in that particular neuron, so it does not jump out to another neuron. Okay, so it's an insulator, and it also provides nutrients to the axon, right? Because these are all living tissues or living cells that require nutrients. Okay, next one, node of Ranvier. So the node of Ranvier is the in between these myelin sheath is not continuous all along the axon. You have breaks in between. Okay, you have breaks in between here. Breaks, break as in BREAKS, break, means not the break as in butter. Okay, node of Ranvier. Certain neurons have parts or segments or sections that are not insulated. So there's a short gap there. Okay, there are regular gaps. This gap is known as node of Ranvier. Now the function of node of Ranvier is actually to accelerate, is to make the impulse move faster. Okay, so scientists have found that they have experimented with this axon that has been removed the myelin sheath, okay, and also the other one with doesn't have with the myelin sheath. So because of the node of Ranvier, the impulse, they found that the impulse will jump faster. It will be transferred faster from for this neuron that has this node of Ranvier. Okay, so this gap actually helps to accelerate, to make the impulse flow faster because they jump from one to the other. Okay, and lastly, the synaptic knob is the other side. After receiving impulse, it passes on to the other side. This is to synapse. This is to actually to connect to the other neuron, or it can also pass on to the effector. Effector is the muscle or the gland that will produce the impulse, produce the response. Okay, so it's the swelling. So it's like a bulging there. Afterwards, I'll show you a diagram that is magnified. You can see the bulge there. Okay, the synaptic knob. So the synaptic knob sends signals to the muscle cells, the gland cells, or to other neuron. It can also synapse with another neuron. Okay, clear? So these are the parts that you should know. Number one, how to label. Number two, you should know how to explain the function. Explain the function of these parts. All right, okay, I see there are no questions here. I think very few students are watching. Everybody's still holidaying, right? This is the last week of your school holidays, unfortunately. Everybody is crying already. Okay, next week going back to school, right? Okay, so just a revision for those who have done this in chapter 4. Right? Now, let's carry on spinal cord. Remember I showed this diagram before in my previous slide, my previous lesson last week. If you've forgotten about it, you can go and have a look at it later. All right, go to my channel. You can find it last week's lesson. So you notice I mentioned that you will not be able to explain about this thing, gray matter, right? And also the white matter. So gray matter is like the butterfly shape there in the middle there. Okay, it's gray matter. Now, why? Now you'll be able to understand because you notice that cell bodies are found in the white matter. You see here, this is the white matter. Sorry, gray matter here. You see here the butterfly shape here. Now you see inside there, don't you find cell body? This one is a cell body. This is a cell body. You see the two little circles there. These are the cell bodies of the three types of neurons that you find inside the spinal cord. So there's one, right? We forget about the white matter later. Okay, we go back to this one first. So white matter is the other one, the one that is on the outer side. This one consists of axons. So you can see for the white matter, it is axon. Let me give a color. This is axon. All these outside here, these are axons coming in there when moving out here. All these are axons. So the white matter consists mainly of axons that are wrapped in the myelin sheath, the fat there. Okay, and for the gray matter, you have these mostly cell bodies inside the middle part here. You can see very clearly, okay? These are your cell bodies here. Inside here, this is cell body, this is cell body here. So this is where your gray matter is. Okay, now see the direction of impulse. The neuron that passes or transmit impulse into the spinal cord, they go by the other one, the what they call the dorsal root. Okay, they come in by the dorsal root. The impulse that goes in, it comes in by the dorsal root through the sensory neuron. So the sensory neuron's function is to transmit impulse from the receptor. This is the receptor. Receptor at your fingertips, the receptor in your retina, the receptor at these special cells, the receptors, they will send in the impulse to the spinal cord. Okay, this one is from the spinal cord. That means this is a reflex action. That means you touch something hot, okay, you touch something that is sharp, all this coming in from your skin. Okay, and that is a sensory neuron. Now you see the sensory neuron is not continuous until the end here, right? It sort of like breaks there, it stops there, and you have another neuron called a relay neuron in the gray matter. Okay, inside the gray matter, you have this relay neuron. So what it does is the relay neuron that transmits the impulse from the sensory neuron, and it goes to the next one. You can see the next one is the motor neuron. Okay, the one that's labeled in red. Motor neuron transmits the impulse from the relay neuron to the other side. Now this is to produce a response that is to be passed on to the effector. Okay, so you see the direction is receptor, then pass the receptor, the impulse moves from the receptor into the spinal cord through the sensory neuron. In the spinal cord, this neuron, this impulse is transmitted from sensory neuron to the relay neuron, and then from the relay neuron to the motor neuron before it is sent to the effector. Okay, you remember these what they call the pathway. You have to remember the pathway. Okay, so I will rub this off first. Right, and you can see clearly the pathway coming in from the dorsal root and coming out from the ventral root. So it's always like one particular pathway. Okay, so you see all these are the the cell bodies. The cell body of the sensory neuron is in the dorsal root ganglion. This is the bulge here called dorsal root ganglion. The cell body of the relay neuron is found in the gray matter. And the cell body of the motor neuron is also found in the gray matter. Okay? So you can see gray matter consists of a lot of cell bodies. The cell body of relay neuron and the motor neuron is found in the gray matter. Okay, so you understand now when I say gray matter consists of cell bodies, now you can see where is the position, where is the location. And then for white matter, it's mostly you don't have the cell body there, so it's actually the axon that going in, coming, passing the new impulse, passing impulse to the spinal cord, and also passing the impulse out of the spinal cord. Okay, next one. So here, very basically, you can see if you have a diagram like this, they ask you to label the direction of impulse. Okay, if you label direction impulse, it's always from the stimulus, okay, which you stimulate the receptor. Receptor will produce impulse, pass the impulse through the sensory neuron into the spinal cord. So you have to draw the arrow going in. And this is the dorsal root. It comes in from the dorsal root. Okay, and then inside the spinal cord, the impulse will be passed on to the relay neuron. Okay, so you have to label another arrow. You need to have minimum 3 arrows. One to go in, one in the spinal cord, and the other one coming out. So the other one is coming out from the neuron, relay neuron to the motor neuron. So you can see there are 3 arrows. You need to show 3 arrows. Okay, so you can either do like this, passing through like this, and another one coming out. Okay, so it has been asked before in questions, ask you to label the direction of the impulse. So you don't be so good. You don't draw one only, you gotta draw 3. At least one going in, one inside, and one coming out. Okay, right. Let's go to the next one now. Sensory neuron. Let's look at the difference in each type of it. For sensory neuron, how to recognize is a sensory neuron? Okay, sometimes I give you a diagram. Okay, do you know whether this is sensory neuron or relay neuron or motor neuron? How do you see? Okay, so simple. So in sensory neuron, the function is to carry impulse from the sensory receptor, that means coming from your senses, these receptors, to the CNS, is the central nervous system. That means it could be the brain or it could be the spinal cord. Okay, now how do you see this? You will have mostly sensory neurons have the cell body in the center of the entire neuron. So you don't have the cell body on one side. Your cell body is roughly right in somewhere in the middle, and then you will have dendron and axon. Okay, dendron is the this filament, right, that passes the impulse into the cell body. That one is called dendron. Axon is the one that passes the impulse out of the cell body. So you will see that the direction is important. Whenever you look at the neuron or you want to label it, the direction is important. If it goes away from the cell body, it is known as axon. If that part comes into the cell body, that one is called dendron. Okay, so receptor is here. So the dendrites receive impulse from receptors and send them to the cell body. Okay, the dendrites will receive the impulse. So sends it to the cell body. And then after that, the cell body will transfer this impulse through the axon. You see the direction there? Okay, so the direction of impulse is important when you want to label your neurons. All right, so dendron is the one before the cell body. The one that's after the cell body carries impulse out of the cell body is called axon. Okay, so this is how you recognize. And of course, the other side will be the, this one will go into the cell, we call that the spinal cord, right? The cell body is in the dorsal root ganglion. Okay, so normally the cell body, this one will be found in the dorsal root ganglion. Remember that part that is bulging out here? This spinal cord, the dorsal root is at the dorsal root ganglion, the bulge there. Okay, this cell body is found inside there. Okay, next one. How about relay neuron? Okay, this is the easiest to identify, easiest to see. You will see that it's basically the entire cell. You can only see the dendrites and the cell body. You don't have very long projections. Okay, you don't have very long. You don't really see the axon and the dendron and so on. Okay, so here you label these are the dendrites. This one is the synaptic knot, the one that transfers, the ones that is going to transfer the impulse to another neuron. Another name for relay neuron is called interneuron. This is according to the KBSM syllabus. Okay, so this is found mostly in the gray matter. Okay, the one that connects your sensory neuron to the this called the motor neuron, the one in the middle. Okay, the gray matter. So it connects sensory neuron to the motor neuron. All right, okay. This is sensory neuron. Okay, let's say coming in, right, the impulse, and then in the middle here you have the relay neuron, and the other side you will have the motor neuron. So it makes the connection between these two, right? Transfers impulse from sensory neuron to the motor neuron, right? It sends impulses from the sensory neuron to the to the central nervous system, and from the nervous system to the motor neuron. Okay, so it connects the two. All right. Okay, so the direction impulse you can see here, this side is longer, and you have the synaptic knot. This one must be the other side, so it's going out to the synaptic knot. Always dendrite receive the impulse. Okay, next one more, motor neuron. Okay, just now the diagram I actually used example for motor neuron to show you the basic structures. You can see the same diagram again. Okay, so this is the axon, right? For motor neuron, usually axon is long, very much longer than the dendron. Sometimes you can't see the dendron also. You only see the dendrites. Okay, dendrites is where the impulse comes in. Okay, you will not find the cell body right in the middle. You'll find the cell body right at one end, and your axon is very long. Okay, so that is how you identify motor neuron. And then the other side will be the synaptic knots to transfer it to the what they call the effector. Okay, so found in the ventral root of the spinal cord. So motor neuron will be at the ventral root. Okay, now coming out, the impulse coming out, it takes the other route, going in through the dorsal root, coming out from the ventral root of the spinal cord. Okay, if you look at the diagram just now, coming in is the dorsal root, coming out is the ventral root. So it receives impulse from the relay neuron. So inside your gray matter was the relay neuron. Then now this impulse is passed on to this motor neuron to be sent to the effector to produce the response. Okay, sends impulses to the effector to produce the appropriate response. Okay, to produce the correct response, maybe you need to pull back your hand. Okay, contraction of the muscles that will help you to do that. Okay, next, this is the effector. Okay, so motor neuron, the next thing you should draw is the effector, not another neuron. Okay, and the cell body of this motor neuron is found in the gray matter. Okay, the cell body is found right inside the gray matter, and the other one that comes out here is the axon, very long axon, and it's in the white matter. Axon is in the white matter. Okay, now types of neurons. So I hope you can identify. All right. So the first one on the left, I give you the R. R here stands for receptor. So if it connects to the receptor, and you can see another clue here, what they call the cell body is roughly in the middle here. We don't have it on one end. Okay, so this one is the sensory neuron. All right, sensory neuron. And then the second one, you find you hardly see the axon or the dendron. You can see only the dendrites and the cell body. This one is the relay neuron. And the other one, the third one, you find your cell body is roughly at one end. You don't have the dendron on the other side, right? And then this axon is very long, okay, and it's connected to what is it passes impulse to the effector. So it must be the motor neuron. Okay, that's how you identify. Okay, like another way to see is you see this one now. So for sensory neuron, it passes impulse from the one that is before is called dendron. Okay, this one is called the dendron. This one, this is the dendron, and the other one, this part is the axon. So you see the direction of the impulse. Again, how do you label? All these are the dendrites. All the neurons will have dendrites because that's where they receive the impulse from the preceding neuron, the neuron before it, to get the impulse. Okay, so this is synaptic knot. The other end is a synaptic knot. And one of the other ends is the dendrite. Dendrite is to receive, synaptic knot is to pass it to the other side. Okay, and the direction is always one direction. Never, you cannot interchange the direction. When you want to go this way, you cannot have the impulse going back the same neuron using the same, the different direction, but using the same neuron. Okay, so this is dendron, this is the axon, all right? And for this one, you can see the axon is much longer for the motor neuron. And you can hardly see any dendron there. Dendrites you have, but not dendron. Okay, next. So let's look at one new neuron. You see, it's not continuously all the way. There will be connection with the next neuron. So you see there's a small little gap there. All right, the one in blue here. So on the left-hand side here, this is actually one neuron, right? Here. And it will pass the impulse to the next one. Okay? There is a small little gap actually in between. That gap is known as the synapse. So this is the next neuron. Okay, so the one that is before is called a presynaptic neuron. Okay, or presynaptic cell, because cell is actually a neuron. Neuron is a cell, right? And the other one that passes the impulse to the other side is called a postsynaptic neuron. Okay, so here you see, if you magnify that gap there, actually they are not touching. There is a slight gap in between, and the gap is actually very small. It is like 20 nanometers. The gap between the synapse is about 20 nanometers. So you can just imagine, all right, it's not physically touching, but it is not a problem because the message will get passed over somehow, right? We'll see how the next part of the lesson, we'll see how this message can pass over through the gap. Okay, so these impulses, which are positively charged, right, will travel along the axon to the synaptic knot. That means travel to here, right? Synaptic knot is the ending, okay? And the one that has this thing, this is synaptic knot, right? This thing here. This is the synaptic knot. Okay, this one. This is the synaptic knot, this one. And this is the, one is the pre, one is the post. Pre is before passing, that knot is called the pre. And the other one that receive is called the post-synaptic. Okay, then the knots there, slight little gap here is about 20 to 40 nanometers. So that gap is known as the synapse. Okay, so the next thing we need to learn is how are the impulse passed through the synapse, even though there's a gap. Okay, does it mean the electrons can jump? Okay, electricity can jump. Okay, so we are going to learn how the impulse gets passed on to the next. We call it the postsynaptic knot. Okay, so let's see. So this is a diagram that shows the pre and the post. Say the presynaptic is the one before. Okay, so this one passing impulse here, there's one here, and then this is the one that is after. This is the second one here. So we call it the postsynaptic. Okay, so the presynaptic, the ending is this one. So this is the presynaptic neuron with that synaptic knot, the one that looks like a bell shape like that. That is a knot, right? And then the other side is to receive. Okay, we call it the postsynaptic membrane. It's not a knot. This one is not like, sort of a curve here to receive whatever messages. Okay, now how is it passed on? Okay, this synapse actually, because of this the structure of having all this synaptic vesicle and how it works, this is the reason why impulses are only able to travel in one direction. Okay, later I'll explain to you why only one direction, right? So you see, it will, when the impulse come over to this synaptic knot, this impulse will be converted into chemical signals. So here, originally, it is electrical signals, because we saw about impulse, right? Impulse is actually electrical. So when it comes over to the synapse here, somehow or other, these electrical signals will be converted into a chemical signal. So it's transmitted chemically. So when you talk about chemically transmitted, that means there must be a chemical there. Okay, there must be a type of chemical there. That type of chemical is actually these substances that are found inside the vesicle. At the ends of the synaptic knot, there are many vesicles known as the synaptic vesicle. And inside the synaptic vesicle, there are chemicals known as neurotransmitter. Be careful when you write not neutral. There's no T for the neuro. It's not, there's not neutral, not neutron. So it's neurotransmitter. Neuro from the word neuron. Neuron means nerve cells. Okay. So neurotransmitter molecules. So they're actually chemicals. They are not impulses. They are not electrical. So what happens is when the impulse comes over to the synaptic knot, it will trigger, it will initiate this synaptic vesicle to release this neurotransmitter into this space here. This space is known as the synapse, or we call it the synaptic cleft. That space there is where the chemicals will be released. Okay, and once the chemicals are accepted by the other side, there's a special molecule here we call the receptor protein. The receptor protein, once it receives this neurotransmitter molecule, it is going to generate impulse again. Okay, so the impulse will be generated, and now the impulse will pass over to the other side. Okay, so it's like electrical in the beginning, then somewhere in the middle there it turns into chemical, and after that it comes back and changes back to electrical. Okay, so now how to explain? This is a popular question. Okay, it could be an essay question or part of an essay question, which can carry 6 marks, or can also carry 5 marks or 6 marks or even 7 marks. Okay, depending on how many points they want you to write. Okay, but basically this is what you should write when you want to answer: how is impulse transmitted across synapse? Okay, so first of all, when the electrical impulse reaches the synaptic knot, you can see here there is the impulse. This is in electrical form. So when it reaches here, it will stimulate the synaptic vesicles, which is the one here. This is synaptic vesicle. Okay, right, with red color. See this one, this is synaptic vesicle. Already you have neurotransmitters inside there. Okay, so it will, what happens? These neurotransmitters will move to the other side. It will move nearer to the synaptic cleft. Okay, so these neurotransmitters will diffuse. So it's going to be released into the synaptic cleft. So this, see the diagram here? The arrow means these vesicles are going to move to the membrane on the synaptic cleft, fuse together to the membrane here, and releases this neurotransmitter into the synaptic cleft. Okay, so number 2, the neurotransmitters diffuse through the synapse, go through the synapse, and after that combine with this thing here. This is a receptor molecule, a receptor protein found on the postsynaptic membrane or postsynaptic neuron. Okay, so once it fuses, it combines to it, it will trigger the electrical signals to be produced. So you see, okay, now this is what happens. It will fuse to the other side. The chemical will go to the what we call the receptor protein. Okay, receptor protein. And once it is accepted, okay, the binding of the neurotransmitters to the receptor stimulate the initiation. That means the starting. So the impulse will be start again. So just now was electrical. Now you can see here it turns back to electrical. Okay, electrical. Then in the middle there it turns chemical. Right, it becomes chemical. After that, it will be, the impulse will be generated back. Okay, and then this impulse is transmitted to the next neuron. All right. Okay, so this will require you to explain, okay, the entire sequence. So depending on how many marks, you will just make sure you write all these important points. All right, clear, right? Okay, one more thing to see. All right, now you can see there are mitochondria. It looks like mitochondria there, isn't it, at the synaptic knot. Now, how to label this part first? Let's label it first. If I will give you the diagram, how are you going to label it? What are the things, what are the names of these parts here? Okay, so you're going to label this one is known as the synaptic knot. And the next label, this is the synaptic vesicle. Okay, next, the space there is called the synapse. You can also say synaptic cleft here because it curves inwards here. Then the next one is the post-synaptic neuron or post-synaptic neuron, right? Not referring to the membrane. And that one is the receptor protein. And next one, these are referring to the dots there. These are the chemical called neurotransmitter. Okay, clear? Now, so that's the popular question. Okay, wait. Okay, again. At synapse, electrical signals are first converted into chemical signals. So I'm just summarizing here. So electrical signals here, when it comes over from the cell body through the axon, it comes to the synaptic cleft, a synaptic node. It is electrical. Then it will be converted into chemical because through the use of neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters are actually chemical molecules. And then after that, when it's received by the receptor protein, the electrical impulse will be initiated, will be started again. So you see electrical signals, chemical and electrical. Okay, you have to remember this point. All right, okay, so and examples of neurotransmitters. You need to remember 4 examples. SAND. Okay, how to remember? I remember SAND. S for serotonin, A for acetylcholine, N for noradrenaline. Not adrenaline, they're different. Noradrenaline is different from adrenaline. Noradrenaline. And one more is dopamine. Okay? SAND, remember that. Okay, so you need to remember at least 2 examples here. And this been found by scientists that people who suffer from Parkinson's disease, Parkinson's disease, they're especially occurring in older people, either women or men, and it's characterized by this shaking, all right, where the body or the arm on the legs, they were shaking, and then tremors, we call it tremors. So scientists have found that, all right, it's because of lack of dopamine. Okay, they are unable to produce enough dopamine, and that causes this we call this Parkinson's symptoms. Okay, and you can see one more thing here. Synaptic knots will contain many mitochondria. You can put that in your answer as well. So this mitochondria, when you have mitochondria, you will know that it requires this function, this process requires energy. So the function of mitochondria, why you need so many there, it is to generate energy for the transmission of nerve impulses. Okay, so synaptic knot here, these synaptic vesicles have to move across, right? All this requires energy. So the mitochondria is helped to produce enough ATP to allow the transmission to occur. Okay, next, the last slide. All right. This is a popular question. Why synapses allow nerve impulses to travel in only one direction? Okay, why only impulse come this way? You can notice from here the top comes to the synaptic knob and then move to the neurotransmitter, move to the synaptic cleft, after it goes to the postsynaptic neuron. Why is it not possible for impulse to be passed on like this? Why is it not possible for impulse to be passed on? Only this is possible, this is not possible. Okay, so there's a reason for this. Okay, how to write the answer? How are you going to explain why impulses allow nerve impulse, why synapses allow impulse to travel in one direction? Okay, the reason is because see what is required to transfer your impulse. For the synaptic knot, you find that you need the synaptic vesicle, and only synaptic vesicles are found, and synaptic vesicles are only found in the synaptic knot because this requires neurotransmitters. Okay, synaptic vesicles containing neurotransmitters are only found on the synaptic knot, not on the post-synaptic knot neuron. It's only found this side, not on the other side. Okay, if it's also found on the other side, that means it can also go the other way. It can also go the other way. So this one, no, it can only be found on this side. And another answer, because you see the one that receives the neurotransmitters is the receptor protein. So the receptor protein is only found on the post-synaptic neuron, not on the pre-synaptic neuron. Okay, so the other answer, receptor protein are only found on the post-synaptic membrane. So it's not the other way around. Therefore, it is not possible for the impulse to pass from the post-synaptic membrane to the pre-synaptic membrane. Okay, it's only from the pre to the post, not from the post to the pre, because you need all these things. you need the vesicles, which is only found on the pre, and you need the receptor protein, which is only found on the postsynaptic. Okay, and then here studies have found, as I mentioned already, that Parkinson's disease, okay, are caused by loss of nerve cells in the brain. Okay, because as we age, many cells of brain cells actually die, right? They don't function anymore. So when they don't function, they are not able to produce a neurotransmitter called dopamine. So that is important to prevent us from getting this Parkinson's disease. All right, okay. So this is the lesson that I have for you today. All right. So I hope that you've understood 12.3. All right. So you can share this link to your friends if you feel that some of your friends are not able to understand 12.3. Okay. All right. So I don't have any comments here. So I hope that you will be able to look at it when you need it. I'm sure some of you don't need it now, right? Because you've just finished your Form 4 exam like 1 month ago. Now you're just all relaxing mode. You don't feel like studying, and you're going to go over to the Form 5 syllabus. But anyway, I'll just finish off the Form 4 syllabus. Another 2 more lessons to go. Okay, bye-bye. I'll see you next week then. Okay, bye-bye. Enjoy the last of your holidays. Okay, see you. Bye-bye.